this is what happens, right? Football's done middle of February, and everybody starts turning their attention to college basketball a little bit as we got a couple of weeks left until we head into March. Who would you say right now is your top team in America?
I mean, I think it's UConn. I really do. I mean, it's just hard. Like, I understand. Like, everything he said made sense. Like the guard play, Purdue. It's different this year, but it's still hard to buy in. Like, it's still because you just feel like Painter and the team. Like when you struggle that way in March, like it becomes a thing mentally, right? Like it's not just like, hey, you know what, new team, fresh year. Like I have a hard time like buying that. It's going to be any different for them. I don't know. I mean, UConn, I think, is probably the best team in the country right now. I think I wouldn't sleep on Houston. I mean, I think no matter what, like Sampson has them ready. Like no matter what happens, it seems like they're always good enough defensively to stay in these games. I don't know. I mean, I would probably right now, if I had to bet a future, I think UConn's going to win, but I'd probably bet Houston.
Man, I want to get there with Houston because, like you said, like Mark, not only is their defense the best in the country, like it's the best in the country by like a mile. If you go to Ken Palm,
Hmm.
their adjusted defensive ranking is 86.5. The next closest team is Rutgers at 90.2. So, like, the gap is kind of insane how good they are on defense. Now, their defense is a little bit differently on the road and on neutral floors than it is at home. They're not going to lose at home this year. Like nobody's just going to go into the Fertitta Center and beat them. But their defense is a little bit different. And then that's been their problem when they've gotten to the tournament is they run into like a Miami kind of team or they run into a Villanova
Hmm.
team that's hitting their shots. And can a Kelvin Sampson Houston team win a game in the 80s? Because that's what it's going to take. They're going to have to win at some point. If you're going to win 6 games in the tournament, you got to win. You have to have a survive and advance game. You got to win a game that's uncharacteristic. Even though defense is your calling card, you're going to need to win an offensive shootout at some point. I still don't know if Houston has the capability of doing that. So I totally get it. They're the number 1 ranked team in the country. All the metrics love them. They're so good on defense, but their offense just worries me. I'm with you, man. I think it's UConn. Like, I know it's so hard to repeat, but man, I mean, what's not to like with that team? To me, they have the least amount of question marks regarding them. You know what I mean? That would be the team that I would feel the most confident about picking to win it all. Just because they got the experience, they got the guard play, they play good enough defense. They obviously won it last year, so Hurley knows what it takes to get it done as a head coach. Purdue, I understand like how impressive Purdue has been, but like we kind of see this every year, and they're going to draw the comparisons. All we're going to hear in March, Mark, is going to be the comparisons to that Virginia team, right? That lost as a 16 seed, and then the following, or lost to a 16 seed, and then the following year won the whole thing. People forget, like when Virginia won the tournament that year, all the luck that had to go their way, right? Like Diabate, they had to miss that free throw. Then it went all the way to the back when they were playing against Purdue, funny enough. And then he had to float one in to send it to overtime. Then they had the game in the Final Four against Auburn where Kyle Guy was fouled on a 3-pointer, makes all 3 free throws. They were down to Texas Tech with like 20 seconds left. Hunter hit a 3. Like there were all these things. And I get when you win a championship, like there are certainly going to be games where you have to get lucky, but for them to have the right breaks go their way 3 times, like I just don't know if, you can count on that if you're Purdue. I want to start with UConn, Kevin, because they are the defending champions, man. And right now they are looking every bit of it. They're on a 12-game win streak. They've won, they're 12-1 in Big East play. However, like you look at the metrics right now, and Houston, Purdue still getting more love than UConn, even though right now in the market, UConn is the favorite to win the national title. So as of today, is UConn your number 1 team? Are they your team to beat in the country?
I have Purdue a little bit ahead of them just because I think they're a little bit more accomplished. Like when you look at what Purdue's been able to accomplish in big games, it's so impressive. I mean, to win, neutral court Marquette, Alabama, Arizona, like you work your way down the list in the non-conference of what they accomplished. To me, they're the number 1 team in the country. But Look, I think the odds are about right in that Purdue and UConn are separating themselves as the two best teams in college basketball. UConn, the way that they've withstood injuries and bounced back when Alex Karaban misses time, Donovan Clingan misses time, Steph Castle, their star freshman, was out earlier in the season. They haven't really missed a beat, and I think that's just tremendous credit to Dan Hurley. And now that they're at full strength, they look as good as anyone.
Kevin, let's stick with Purdue for a little bit because, February and March, much different, right? March has been, they've been easy money to kind of fade when they get into the tournament. And a lot of people say that, hey, maybe the roster is not built to succeed in March. What have you seen about them this season that makes you believe that this could be different this year? The Painter could get over the hump and they could make a strong push in the dance.
Look, I think when they've had their biggest March struggles, the issue has been guard play. And the teams that have had really good guards have been, second weekend type teams, if not more. And I think this year's Purdue team has really good guard play. I think Braden Smith is one of the best point guards in college basketball. His ability to create shots for others and really be, in a lot of ways, the focal point of Purdue's offense. Like if you ask their staff, the most important player to their offense is him, not Zach Edey. Not that Zach isn't the most dominant player in the country. He obviously is, and he's had a tremendous career. But like that's how important they view Braden Smith. And I think when they've had that type of guard, they've been pretty good. I mean, obviously St. Peter's in 22 with Jaden Ivey was a bad loss. But a couple years before that, they're in the Elite Eight with a chance to go to the national championship, if not for a prayer by Virginia. And who is the guard on that team? Carson Edwards, right? Like, I truly think that they have that type of backcourt this year with Braden Smith leading the way and Lance Jones, Fletcher Lawyer also helping out. And so to me, that makes them a real contender to really do this thing.
Mark, I'll tell you the team that you should stay away from this year that's going to be very popular because, again, they're a blue blood, big brand name, won the championship a couple of years ago. I cannot wait to fade them in the tournament, and that's Kansas at 18-1. I think Kansas stinks. I really do. Mark, I am not a fan at all. I think they're terrible. Now, if Kansas got to play the NCAA tournament at Allen Foghouse, that'd be a different story. And I think they're very, very good. But when they go away from the Fog, they're a different team. They don't have depth. They can't really shoot. I don't like them at all. Like, I understand they beat Houston at home and they looked great, but it's like, again, McCullough was banged up. They go on the road, play Texas Tech, lose that game. They've lost at West Virginia. They've lost at UCF. They were the number one team in the country heading into the season. They picked up Dickinson. On paper, their starting five looked like it'd be amazing, but I'm telling you, bunch of people will have Kansas in like their Elite Eight, Final Four because they're Kansas and they're going to be a 1 seed and they're a big name. But if they draw like a tough 8-9 matchup, like if they're the 1 seed in that FAU Memphis kind of game, they're going down. Somebody's going to pick them off. So that would be my team to advise people to stay away from is the Jayhawks. I am looking very much to fading them in the tournament.
I love it. So when we look at the odds boards, like right around them, you have Auburn, you have Kansas, you have Alabama, Kentucky. After that, we know Kentucky's got no shot. They're not even in the same tier, I feel like. Do you think out of those 3 teams, you like Auburn the best more than Bama?
I do. Yeah, I do. I would like Bama, Mark, if they played defense, but they just don't. And I watched them early in the season when they went out of the non-conference and they played the Purdues, the Arizonas, the Creightons of the world. It's the same story every single game. Their offense is elite. Yeah. They can score on everybody, but they just don't have any size. What killed them this year is, like, they knew they were going to lose Brandon Miller. They knew they were going to lose Clowney and Quinterly and all these guys were going to go. The one player that really hurt them was when they lost Charles Bediako, their 7-foot center, because I really think Oates thought that he was going to come back. Like, he didn't recruit any 7-foot centers. He didn't try and go out in the portal and get anybody. Like, he thought Bediako was going to be his anchor in the middle, and they just have nobody to replace him. Like, they try and have Grant Nelson, who's like 6'8", guard some of these guys, and he's just got no shot. Nick Pringle, who's their big man, has been in the doghouse with Oates all season. So they just don't have much size. They can't defend the interior. They can't defend big man at all. And whenever they go up against great teams with good big man, when they went up against Purdue with Edey or when they went up against Arizona with Ballo, all of their big men foul out. Like all three of them foul out every single time. So that's my concern. They can score on anybody without a question. The offense is good enough. But defensively, they're just, when they go up against good teams, they're not going to be able to get stopped. So by default, it would probably be Auburn of the three teams, even though I really don't like any of them, to be honest with you. Yeah, Auburn, the more and more I'm kind of cooling off on them. I really liked them earlier, but I'm not as high on them as I am right now. Tennessee would probably be the cutoff with me. If you're looking at teams to win it all, Tennessee's at 14-1. That would be the cutoff. And then again, Michigan State at 40-1 would be a team that I would take a shot with. And then I think maybe Duke or Marquette would be a team that I would look at as well. Those would kind of be the teams maybe in that range that I would give a shot at. If you look at the landscape of the NBA, Mark, right now, if you had to have your pick of who this year's Miami Heat team is going to be, the NBA generally is like very chalky, right? It's usually, because it's a best of 7. So usually the best teams kind of wear you out and end up winning the series. But Miami is an 8 seed, ended up shocking everybody last year. Do you see a team out there this year that maybe not a lot of people are talking about? Maybe they got 20-1 odds or better right now that you think could make a run in the postseason?
Yeah, so I think the one team that I would look at that's probably a little bit more under the radar, at least like not a top 10 team on the odds board, would probably be the Pelicans. Like, I think the Pelicans have shown that, like, you know, on any given night, they're as talented as anybody. The problem is you don't always know what you can get, right? And if they stay healthy, again, it feels like a broken record talking about these teams like they have to stay healthy, but that's just the landscape of the NBA. Like, you know, last year in the playoffs, we wondered if Kawhi would ever play again. Like, he couldn't, you know, knee wouldn't let him play in the postseason. So I think the Pelicans are just a very talented team that, you know, if they get hot at the right time, sneak into the playoffs, I think they could give, you know, one of these top teams in the West, you know, a real run, and they could pull some upsets, you know, if possible. Is it likely? No, we didn't think the Heat were likely last year, but I think they're a team that is probably going to be much higher than what their market rating is, you know, when we get into the playoffs.
Man, I've been on the Pelicans for the last, 3 years. Just, they're such a what-if team, man. They're such a what-if, because I'm with you. Mark, on paper, there's so much to like, right?
The Clippers are coming through, right? So who knows if the Clippers can do it. I felt the same way about the Clippers. Every year, betting the Clippers on the Clippers, they're going to do it. They're injured, right? And that's just how it's been. So same thing with the Pelicans. Like, are they there yet? Probably not, but could they make a big leap and shock some teams? I think so.